We now have some evidence to mull, multiple weeks worth of subpoenas demanding any and all communications with the twice impeached ex-president that give us a pretty clear sense of what federal prosecutors are looking at and for. We learned this week that special counsel Jack Smith has now demanded testimony and or records from local election officials in all 7 battleground states that were central to the failed attempt by the ex-president and his allies to use fake electors and baseless lawsuits to overturn Trump's 2020 defeat. Those subpoenas, nearly identical in their very specific requests for Trump-related records, are among the first known from Smith since he was assigned to oversee Trump-related key aspects of the January 6th investigation. Joining our coverage, Neal Katyal. He's former acting Solicitor General and currently a professor at Georgetown School of Law and an MSNBC legal analyst. David Jolly is still here. So, Neal, we take these little pieces of the iceberg that pop up and we try to understand what we can about the nature of the special counsel investigation. But what, in your expert view, do you see?
So I think you're right about these pieces of an iceberg. And if I'm Donald Trump right now looking at these different pieces, I would spend a lot less time like selling tacky, overpriced action cards and a lot more time thinking about, hey, I'm facing some criminal charges here. Or potentially. So to me, the subpoenas do 2 things. On the small level, they indicate that the Justice Department is taking a very close look at this fake elector scheme, which I think should make Trump quite nervous. And then I think on the bigger level, it's really them saying, we're not just concerned about January 6th, we're concerned about the events leading up to January 6th. And that means they're going to scrutinize all the ways in which Trump attempted to overturn the election.
Neal, what do we take with the fact that there was consciousness of illegality? Greg Jacobs, the vice president's former chief counsel, testified that they knew and they told Eastman that this was illegal. And there was some indication that Trump was aware of the illegality and unconstitutionality of this plot. And then Trump's fingerprints. I mean, in addition to the subpoenas, if they comb, and I'm sure they've already done this, if they comb through Trump's Twitter feed and look at the visitor log, and I guess I shouldn't assume anything about the Trump White House. It's possible they burned their visitor logs. But he was hauling people in at the height of COVID, state elected officials to work them over. I think some folks from Michigan came in. We've all heard the call from Raffensperger. I mean, his fingerprints were all over this in public. It doesn't seem like a particularly tedious task to tie Trump to the fake electors plot.
I think that's right, Nicole, with one caveat. There's a difference between criminal liability and kind of just moral responsibility. The congressional investigation into 1-6, and we'll hear that report next week, it sounds like, is on the non-criminal side, although they're obviously contemplating a referral to the department on the criminal side. But the difference is this. In criminal law, there's a concept called mens rea. It's not just enough that your fingerprints are on the dirty deeds. It's also got to be that you specifically intended them. And so that is it's always the biggest problem in any prosecution, not just these ones, but, getting into someone's mind, particularly when they can assert the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination, which Trump loves. It's his favorite amendment. That makes the prosecution hard. So that's where you're trying to get these investigations are trying to get at is, did Trump legitimately think that he won the election? And this was all just a way in which a normal winner would behave, or did he do something untoward? And the evidence is sure looking like it's the latter, but that's why the investigation, I think, has taken so long, why you see all of these subpoenas going to these 7 states, why you have even, some of Trump's own press people hauled before the grand jury and asking, did Donald Trump say I lost? Those kinds of things.
Well, can't Pence answer that question? Of course they knew they lost. That's why he got in the car and went to the Capitol that day. We've also got hours of testimony from every campaign official from the top to the bottom, from the data guy to the campaign head. I mean, isn't that the intention, it would seem, of what the 1-6 committee sought to do with that bucket of testimony, proving that Trump knew he lost, Neal?
It is what they were seeking to do in part, but again, it's not their mandate. And so you're going to generate that evidence. It's important that they generate that evidence. But at the end of the day, it's Jack Smith and the criminal side and these prosecutions before grand juries that are really going to generate that. And just like one very telling thing, the January 6th committee has been stymied in their attempts to try and get information from team. Like, for example, there are these call records that, Stephen Miller and all these people have blocked the investigators from getting access to that information. Congress just threw in the towel last week and said, okay, fine, we're not going to do that. We're just going to release the report. But Jack Smith isn't, of course, bound by that. He's on a totally different timeline and doesn't have to worry about the change in political control in that U.S. House of Representatives. And of course, the Senate can pick up, and I think should pick up, the January 6th investigation where it's left off and still pursue some of this. So I'm hoping that with this new Senate that we will see a Senate committee that looks into these questions as well.